Hello, everyone. Welcome to This Week in Mormons, the conference recap edition with the twin sisters, Ariane Smith.
And Tiffany Hales.
We get the joy of recapping the last session, Sunday afternoon session, which is always nice. It's basically the only one I'm available to recap because of my small children. So,
Very true.
but it's always fun to end on it. So,
It is, and as I said yesterday, I'm on a bookend because I recapped the first session
uh-huh.
with Sarah Jorgensen, and now I'm here recapping the last session with you. So
I know. And you know what? It's actually very good for me to recap Sunday afternoon because Sunday afternoon is typically when it hits me, the soothing voices, the lovely music, the warm blanket on my couch. I'm out like a light. But nothing lights a fire in you to stay awake, like knowing you have to talk about it in 15 minutes.
it's very
So,
true. All right. Well, speaking of which, do you want to lead us off with D. Todd
sure.
Christofferson's talk? See, I have to have you talk about
Sure.
Todd Christofferson's talk because I only caught bits and pieces of it because I was finishing up text messaging for our ward dinner group on Saturday night.
Oh, oh dear. Oh
Yes.
dear. Yeah,
So
his talk
tell me what
was
I
good.
missed.
He hit a lot on the kingdoms, the three kingdoms,
Okay.
celestial, terrestrial, telestial, kind of reminding us what it's like to be there. Talked a lot about being celestial and um yeah. He told a cool story at the end about a family in Hawaii that did you hear this part? That they had been offended by some ward members.
No.
Um It was actually a really cool story that their daughter had been sick and the dad, like, was gonna they didn't know what the daughter had, and everybody in the ward knew that she had some type of unknown sickness, and the dad was going to break bread on the he had sacrament duty, and somebody, like, shouted, like, "You can't do that. We might all get sick,"
Oh
and
gosh.
just basically kinda drove him out. Him and his family got up and left and went home from the sacrament service, and he just talked about how the dad, instead of, turning away from the church, like, sat his family down and said, "That was, really bad what happened to us, but we're looking at the big picture and we're not gonna let, one person's opinion or a couple people's meanness, like, destroy our eternal family." And they went back to church the next week or whenever the daughter was better, I don't know.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
it was a cool story.
I think a really good example of the Think Celestial, and I heard that a lot this conference in a lot of the talks, the focus on, remember what President Nelson said, think celestial, and, don't get caught up in the minutia of like a lot of the little stuff. You got to look at it in terms of the long game.
Mhm. Yeah, that was definitely a theme.
It definitely was. And then we had Taylor Godoy. Godoy.
Godoy, I think?
Yeah, I'm not really sure how his last name is pronounced. And he talked a lot about prayer and turning to the Lord for prayer. And that if we reach out to God, we will not fail. So I liked that too.
It was
And then we have
great. Then we
probably my favorite talk of this session. I really liked Gary Stevenson's bridge analogy a lot.
he was my favorite too. I liked
Okay,
it a lot.
tell me what you liked.
Oh, I just liked it's always good to have a visual. He just talked about bridges and the towers that support them, and he talked about the 2 great commandments, loving the Lord and then, of course, loving others, and he just talked about how these are, like, great foundations for ourself in our journey and turning towards Jesus and how they balance everything, just like on a bridge, the towers provide balance to the rest of the bridge, and they work together to hold the bridge up, and it was really, really it was great.
Yeah. One of the things he said that I really liked is he was talking about two different extremes. He was talking about, there are individuals who have little tolerance of those people who are less righteous. That is one
Mhm.
extreme. And then he said, then there are other individuals who, in the process of loving others, they do it without any accountability to God for those people's actions, kind of like in a way like saying, oh, their actions, aren't that big of a deal. And I have seen both of those extremes in my life. And he said, both are imbalances. And it just got me thinking, how do you balance that? How do you balance, you know, obviously loving your neighbor or loving,
Mhm.
an individual, maybe it's a friend or a family member that is making choices that you disagree with because they are choices that perhaps are not in line with gospel teaching and gospel commandments. How do you balance not being judgmental and not having intolerance for that, at the same time not saying or condoning the behavior, saying, "Oh, that behavior, that's no problem. God's okay with that." And that's a really tough balance that sometimes I really struggle with, to have the right balance
Mhm.
between those two.
Yeah.
So he didn't really tell us how to do that. He just told us that both are
No.
imbalances and we need to do it. So maybe that's a question for all of us to ponder and
Yes.
perhaps
I
take
think
to the
that's a
temple, because there was a
I
lot of
think that's an
temple stuff.
individual situation discernment type of thing,
Yeah,
personal discernment and
yeah.
personal revelation type of a thing. So, okay, who do we have next? Elder
We had
Held
Elder Haled, where he talked
and
about consequences and agency. I liked where he said, "We are agents, not objects."
mhm,
And he says, he talked about attitude and choices define us better than our trials. And he really talked about, hey, when you have these trials, he talked a lot about, there's a yin and a yang, for everything there is an opposite. And when you have these trials, to really look for, the positive aspects of the challenges that we have. Liked that.
yeah. Yeah, it was good. Then we had Elder Anderson. He talked a lot about covenants, which seems to be a big theme this
Very
whole
big theme.
conference. Lots about theme, lots about covenants, temple. The temple is the Lord's house, and he talked a lot about the last days and how the temple is a place of refuge for us and safety. And again, on theme. So,
Exactly. Exactly. And then we had Mark L. Pace of the Sunday School. He talked about the Holy Ghost and the Book of Mormon, and just that the Book of Mormon makes this dispensation different from all other dispensations and deepens our conversion to the Lord when we study it. Kind of
mhm.
exactly what I would think a Sunday school president would speak on.
Yes.
Considering "Come Follow Me" is his umbrella.
Yes, he came in with an agenda. A good one,
A
but
good one. Yes.
all right, then we had President Nelson, and we
Ye-
got a recorded talk
Yes, we did.
from him, even though he
Now,
was there in person, which I don't think we were surprised. I think we kinda knew this could go either way.
was he there in person in the afternoon session?
He was, we saw him afterwards, being wheeled
Oh,
out in a
I did.
wheelchair,
I did
so
not see that. Yesterday, I saw President Eyring being wheeled out in a
mhm.
wheelchair, but I did not see that President Nelson was there today. That's awesome.
Yeah, at least I think. I'm pretty sure that's what I saw. Now I'm second guessing. It's
Okay.
all a blur, but I'm pretty sure he was there. And but yeah, his mission or his message was recorded. He talked about the Kirtland Temple and the recent purchase, just kind of leading into again a whole message about temples and the priesthood power and gathering of Israel and the keys that we've been given through to use through temples, and which of course was leading up to temple news.
To his temple announcements, I thought it was very interesting that he
Mhm.
told us all to go read the 109th section of the Doctrine and Covenants, which is the dedicatory prayer of the Kirtland Temple, to understand and learn about the purpose of the temple. I thought that was great.
Yeah.
All right. Speaking of which, shall we close this out with all of the temples that were announced? So, did you
Yeah.
have any
Sure.
surprises on this list?
I was surprised at how many were in the United States. I don't
Yes.
know. I think I've just gotten used to, especially the past few, like most are foreign and then there's one or
Yeah.
two maybe in the US, but there are quite a few in the US and some were surprising.
Well,
The Yuma, Arizona one was surprising too. My husband was in shock because driven through there all the time as a kid between California and
Oh
Arizona,
yeah.
and he was like, "Really? That's kind of in the middle of nowhere." But I guess that's the point. People in the middle of nowhere need a temple too.
Yes.
So,
Well, and Houston is going to have two temples now because I think they have
yeah.
a temple already. And then
Uh-huh.
I have to tell you, so Laura Wolford, who I have podcasted with several times on this podcast, she lives in
Uh-huh.
Ohio. She sent me a text immediately after they announced Cincinnati, and she
Oh,
just said, "We were screaming and yelling and throwing snacks at my house," and she was
were
super
they so
excited about
excited?
that. Yeah, really
That's
excited.
great.
I was kind of
That's great. The
surprised.
Hawaii one was surprising, didn't you
Yes,
think?
I
But not
did.
because if you've been to Hawaii, you realize how long it takes to drive across that island. So, and there are a lot of members there. So it's very
Okay.
exciting. Yeah.
Well, and I wonder if so now I haven't I've been to the Big Island, but not the main island, only to get on an airplane to
Mhm.
go to the Big Island. So, is the temple across the island from where the Polynesian Cultural Center is?
No, the temple is by the Polynesian Cultural Center,
Okay,
but it's
okay,
across the island from Honolulu. So it's
got
not
it,
close to where you fly in. You have to
got it.
drive
Okay,
all the way. It's not close to the big metropolis, of Honolulu.
okay,
So
got it. Okay. I was surprised that Utah was going to get two more temples. In fact, when they
yes.
when they kept flying off Utah names, I kept thinking, "Hey, hey, Idaho, where's Idaho here? We need another temple."
I know West Jordan and Lehigh, they already have a Jordan River. Isn't that in West Jordan?
Well, it's kind of by West Jordan,
Uh-huh.
but I mean they've got lot of new growth out there, kind of kind of in the
Mhm.
Riverton area. But I mean they also have the Oquirrh Mountain Temple that is out there, kind of by Daybreak. So
Mhm.
they're going to have a situation where they're going to have probably four temples. You'll have Draper, Oquirrh Mountain, Jordan River, and this new West Jordan temple, probably all within eyesight of each other, if you got up on the mountain.
Mhm.
So
Wow.
anyway, so yeah, lots of fun new
And
temples.
then some cool foreign ones too. The Victoria, British Columbia, that's
Yes,
exciting. The Scotland?
I know, Edinburgh, Scotland. Edinburgh,
Yeah.
Scotland. I think Scotland
Uh-huh.
had been wanting a temple for a while, so I think that had been on people's prediction list. So
Mhm.
anyway, very cool. The temple work marches on as every conference. It's really great. So
Mhm.
okay, well, I think that about wraps it up for us. Ariane, I think we should tease something really quick here before we close it out.
Oh, right. You had the best
You,
idea
I had the best idea just a few
of
minutes
what we
ago.
need to talk about next time.
Yes. So we will record the last weekend of the month of April. So the next 2 weeks will be other hosts, but we will record the weekend that begins with Friday the 27th. And I said to Ariane, I said, I think for our Patreon segment, we ought to do a whole Patreon segment on conference music because by then, hopefully, it'll be up on the apps. We saw a lot of new arrangements this conference, and I just want to do a deep dive into conference music. So I am going to tease that as our
Mhm.
Patreon segment when we record in a couple of weeks.
I think that'll be fun. I think there were some songs this conference that we don't usually hear. Like,
Exactly.
oh, not the usual
Exactly.
suspects.
Exactly.
So,
So, anyway, that's
mhm.
our tease for the next time we record. Twim Nation, thank you very much for listening to us. Thank you very much for your support and for all our Patreon listeners for your continued support. And please, if you have any questions or comments, reach out at contact at thisweekinmormons.com. Send those emails in. Find us on Facebook, on Twitter, and on the Instagram. Thank you very much.